Hello and welcome to another new video from Siderograph.com. In this video, we're going to go over dates that might be of interest between now and the end of 2016 for 17 securities. So before we get started, we want to cover the disclaimer here, which is that this is for educational purposes only and that past performance is no guarantee of future results. Any results shown here might not be typical. And this video is purely for educational purposes. And if you need some professional advice, please reach out to professional advisors, as this video here doesn't contain any type of advice whatsoever. Okay, so if we jump right into the first security, this shows the advanced Astro dashboard for Brent crude oil. If you look at West Texas Intermediate crude oil, the graph looks about the same. So whether you're looking at Brent crude oil or West Texas Intermediate, the overall indicators look about the same. So you can see here that for 2015, there was a low in the indicator and a high in the indicator and a low in the indicator that corresponded relatively closely for crude oil. If we go into 2016, we can take a look and see that so far it's actually worked out pretty well. You can see that the low in the indicator corresponded pretty closely with the low in crude oil. And if we go a little bit farther out, if we go to the June timeframe, we can see that the indicator makes a peak. So this is a time period that I'm looking for as far as when there might be a topping pattern or we might see a downturn in the price of crude oil. Going on to the next security. So this is an indicator for the Canadian dollar as compared to the US dollar. So you can see the high in the indicator here, high in the exchange rate here. You can see that for 2015, there was some correspondence, but you start to see a lot more correspondence when you get into 2016. So sometimes you'll see this. You'll see a situation where the indicator goes up and there's a little bit of a delayed response in the security. So that's what we might be seeing here. So we saw a bottom in the indicator here, whereas the Canadian dollar made a bottom a little bit further out. So for the Canadian dollar, I'm looking for that to possibly have already made a low in early May of 2016. So starting in early May 2016 is when we could start to see several months in which the Canadian dollar would become increasingly weak against the US dollar, in which case the graph of the Canadian dollar to the US dollar would go up relatively significantly. Going on to the next security. So this is the stock market in France. You can see for the year 2015, there is a pretty close correspondence between the indicator, which is in red, as well as the stock market in France, which is in blue. So if we come over to 2016, we can see that similar to what we talked about for the Canadian dollar, sometimes there's a little bit of a delay. So the indicator made a bottom at the end of January, and it was a little bit after that is when the stock market in France made its bottom. So we've seen the indicator go up as well as the French stock market going up, and we've seen a little bit of weakness recently in the market. So the indicator is showing some strength between now and the beginning of July, but after then, we might see a little bit of weakness. So for the French stock market, after the beginning of July, we could see some weakness, and this is consistent with a few other major world stock market indices that we're going to cover later in the video. So if you go to the DAX, which is the German stock market, you can take a look and see that for 2015, there was a relatively close correspondence between the indicator and the German stock market. It wasn't perfect. So for example, right here, you'll see a situation where there was a little bit of an uptick in the DAX when there's a relatively small uptick in the indicator. But overall, the tops were relatively close to each other and the bottoms were relatively close as well. So if we go to 2016, you'll see that the bottom in the DAX corresponded closely with the indicator, and we've seen some strength so far, both in the indicator and in the stock market. So similar to the French stock market, it looks like around the beginning of July is when we could start to see some significant weakness in the DAX. Right here in the indicator, you see there's a little bit of a uptick in downturn. So that could be what we're seeing right now. This might just be a little bit early, and we might see a rally between now and the next month or so. But after that, around the time period of July is when we could see some weakness. So this right here is an individual stock that's traded in Canada. So you can see that for 2015, there was some correspondence between the two. And the low was pretty closely captured right here around the end of January 2016. So for 2016, we might see a consolidation pattern between now and the middle of September. But the time period that I'm watching for is between mid-August and mid-October. We could see some weakness. And of the two time periods, I'm more focusing on the mid-October time period. The thought process is that if this is the low point for the indicator, we could, in this time frame, around October of 2016, possibly see a low for First Quantum Minerals. Going on to the next security, so this is the FTSE 100, which mirrors the UK stock market. So you can see what it looked like for 2015. And if we go into the year 2016, we can see that there is a bottom in the indicator as well as a bottom in the FTSE 100. And similar to the other world stock market indices that we've talked about, such as the CAC and the DAX for France and Germany, respectively, you can see that around the beginning of July is when the indicator is making a top. Going over to the Chilean stock market, the IPSA in Chile, you can see that there is a top in the Chilean stock market that was pretty close to the top in the indicator for the Chilean stock market. So once again, this looks pretty similar to the last one that we looked at for the FTSE. You can see a possibly a little bit of weakness over the next month or so, and then some strength leading up to a possible large correction in early July 2016. This right here shows the indicator and the price of JP Morgan's stock price for the year 2015. So if we go to 2016, we can see that JP Morgan's stock price has been strong relatively recently, but if you look at the indicator, a low point for the stock could come around November of 2016. So just to describe the dashboard a little bit better, this yellow area that you see reflects the current year. So even though it says 2015 here, this is really the year 2016. And you can see that it goes from January of 2016 through the end of December of 2016. And in front of it and behind it, you also have 3 months prior to the year selected and 3 months after. So on the left here, you'll see where it says year. It says year 2016. This tells you which year is graphed. So in the yellow section, this will be the year 2016. And then in the white section on the left side, you'll have the 3 months prior to that year. So this would be the fourth quarter of 2015. And then towards the right here, you'll see the first quarter after the end of that year, 2016. So this would be the first quarter of 2017. So overall for JP Morgan stock price, we could see a little bit more upside or downside in the near term, but the stock price probably is not going to do all that much between now and the end of the summer, and we might see some weakness and a low point as we get toward the end of November of 2016. Okay, here's the NASDAQ. There's the graph for 2015. And for 2016, you can see that this is somewhat similar to the other world stock market indices in that after the beginning of July, we could see some weakness. One difference here is that the weakness in the NASDAQ appears to be a little bit earlier than the other stock market indices. This one appears to start having weakness in June, which is a little bit earlier. So one thing that I'm watching is to see if that weakness starts to play out in the NASDAQ in June, which could be an indicator that we're more likely to continue to see weakness starting early July for the other world stock market indices. So here is the indicator for 2015, and you can see the New York Stock Exchange as well against the indicator for the New York Stock Exchange. For 2016, you can see that compared to the other world stock market indices, the drop-off is much more significant for the New York Stock Exchange than it is for the others. So once again, we are looking for weakness starting in early July 2016. Right here, you can see Palladium futures for last year, for the year 2015. So you can see that the indicator had some volatility, and here, for example, is a low in the indicator and a low in the price of Palladium. So with respect to 2016, we've had some pretty good strength in Palladium leading up between the beginning of the year and early May 2016. But it looks like that upturn might change direction and turn around and go south a little bit. So we could see some weakness in Palladium between now and the end of June of 2016. This right here is a graph of the indicator for platinum, as well as platinum graphed in blue here for the year 2015. If we go to 2016, we can see that the price of platinum has come up rather significantly since the beginning of the year, even more than palladium. However, similar to palladium, it looks like we might be toward the top of this current bull run, in that over the next month or so, we might start to see a downturn in the price of platinum. And that downturn for platinum, that could go through at least the middle of June, and it might even go through the middle of October of 2016. So right here you can see the indicator for the Russell 2000 as well as the Russell 2000 itself for the year 2015. Similar to some of the other graphs that we've seen, it looks like we could see some weakness continue for the Russell 2000, and then possibly a little bit of strength leading up into the beginning of July, at which point we might start to see some significant weakness. Going on to the SMI, which is in Switzerland. So you can see the indicator for 2015 as well as the stock market in Switzerland for 2015. This right here is the graph for 2016. So we can see that before the year 2016 and 2015, there was a pretty close correspondence between the top in the indicator and the top in the stock market in Switzerland. So the low over here took place relatively close to the low for the stock market in Switzerland. So as compared to the price in May, where we are right now, we might see a little bit of strength going into the middle of the summer. And after then, we might see some weakness going into mid-October of 2016. However, after that, starting around mid-October of 2016, we might start seeing some strength in the SMI from there over the next several months. This right here is a graph for 2015 for the STI index in Singapore as compared to the price of the STI. So for the year 2016, you can see that there has been a pretty close correspondence between the indicator and the STI. And you've seen here that once again, as we've talked about for a couple of the securities, sometimes the indicator will go down a little bit off from where the security or the index goes down. So the index ticked down a little bit before the indicator did. But what this tells me is that we might see a little bit of strength in the STI leading up to around mid to late July, at which point we could start to see some weakness. This right here is the TSX in Canada. You can see this is a graph for the year 2015. So if we go to the year 2016, you can see that the bottom in the indicator corresponded to the bottom in the TSX, and the indicator is projected to reach a top around the beginning of July 2016. And I would say that this is consistent with what we've seen for other world stock market indices. Okay, this right here is the graph for 2015 for Valeant Pharmaceuticals for 2015. And if we go to the current year, 2016, you can see that Valeant has had some weakness this year, which has continued from the previous year, 2015. And within the next month or two, I would say around the first half of June, give or take, is when we might start to see some strength. So we might start to see a bottoming pattern. And who knows, maybe in the middle of March, this could have been a capitulation. And from here, we might see a little bit more bottoming, but I would say within the next month or two, we could start to see some strength from Valeant Pharmaceuticals between now and the rest of 2016. I hope you found this video to be useful. If you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to download the PDF file that we just went over. So the video that you're watching right now, right below it, you can download a PDF file that contains this entire PowerPoint presentation. If you're on YouTube watching this video, the link will be in the description to the video. And if you're watching this on the website, the link to download the file should be right below the video. And if you go to the last page, you'll be able to click on these links that will take you to various resources if you'd like to learn more about the Advanced Astro Indicator, the weights and how we choose them as far as which ones to include, as well as the historical correlation analysis that we ran for the year 2015 to see which securities had the highest correlations with each of the indicators. So thank you for watching, and please subscribe to the channel.